This is Abe Friedtanzer from Awards Buzz. So excited to be with Marlee Matlin and Shoshannah Stern here today discussing Marlee Matlin, Not Alone Anymore.
Thank you for having us.
Thrilled to be here.
I just want to start by sharing that my grandmother and her brother were children of deaf adults and always talked to me about how, during the Great Depression, they would listen to baseball games on the radio and then act them out for their parents. And my grandmother also is somebody who really shared my love of film. And even though she passed away a few years ago, I think she would be very, very excited to know that I was speaking to both of you right now.
Oh, I love that.
She's here in spirit.
Yes.
Thank you. And so I got to see this film at Sundance. It's really nice also that you were both there. It was towards the end of the festival. I know most people don't necessarily stick around towards the end, but I know, Marlee, you have a strong history with the festival, and Shoshannah, it was great to have you there. How are you feeling now that the film is getting out into the world?
It's really happening.
I don't know if it's really hit me yet.
You keep saying that.
I know.
When is it going to hit you?
I don't know.
Okay, I'll do it for you.
Now it's hitting me now, just now.
No, actually, it's been a great feeling. It's been an incredible ride, a journey. To be with her and spending as much time as possible together and promoting a movie that we really feel passionate about. And for this to really be out there for the whole world to see. It's hard to put it into words because it's this feeling of, I'm expressing myself through my hands, that's what I'm so excited about. It's really exciting. I'm very curious as to how people will react because all of the years that I've been approached by people here and there who's said to me, we're big fans, or they tell me that a show that I've been on they love, or the character that I played. And a lot of times they tell me they know me. And in this case, as the documentary shows, they did not. So once they watch this, they'll find out that there's a lot more to me than they realize.
We've been really lucky to have this long festival tour. Sundance was 6 months ago, and it didn't even hit me that it was 6 months ago until we were on stage when we were at Tribeca. And Marlee said, "Thank you so much for coming to Tribeca." And I was like, oh my gosh, we're here. It's been 6 months. And it's been really great to interact with different audiences, to be able to get the idea of what they're responding to. And it's all different moments that the audience responds to. It's not the same moments, which has been really cool. And at the same time, it still hasn't been widely released
Not
yet. And so here pretty soon, more and more people will be able to watch the film, and it's been really an amazing journey so far. I'm so happy that I've been able to do this with Marlee.
Because Coda was the beginning of my first experience with Sundance, my true experience with Sundance. And to be able to go back to Sundance for this film was like, wow, it really hit me when I got back to Sundance at the beginning, which was with Coda. So there's a connection there. It's like home. And then to be able to go to different festivals with this film, to experience the different energies, the different people, but they're all there for the same reason, to watch the movie. It's just been a beautiful, beautiful community that these film festivals have brought out.
Yeah.
Well, I'd love to talk about what's in the film, but first I want to talk about how the film came about, because I also believe, Marlee, you were instrumental in making sure that there was a female deaf director who was selected. And while I've been watching Shoshannah on screen for many years in shows like Jericho, I'm curious when you first knew of her.
So I can't, in all honesty, pinpoint when it was that I first met her. She might have a better memory of that than I do, not to put you on the spot.
Hurt.
But of all those years that every time we would get together, every time we would talk, every time I laid my eyes on her, I always knew that she was special. She was a special friend. And I knew that she had, well, she already did, but I knew that she had so many talents within her, not just as an actor, but she's a writer, and now we can call her a director. So being able to say to American Masters at PBS, I have to have a deaf woman direct this documentary to be able to do this because it would make sense for someone like her to be on board and to bring it on, to life on screen in a way that nobody else could. So they asked me who it was I was interested in. I said the first thing that popped into my head, naturally, having watched her all these years, having wanted to say this all these years, Shoshannah Stern. And here she is sitting right next to me. Yay.
Well, one thing I love about your directing style is that a lot of the time you're just sort of sitting on a couch opposite each other. And I think that's something that watching you sign gives us a unique opportunity, because very often I think we hear the voice of a director from behind the camera. And while that's an interesting storytelling strategy, I really, really love this. And I love just how comfortable it feels. This is your first time directing. Did it feel quite that comfortable?
Yes, it is my first time directing, and I knew that I had a huge responsibility to do this in a way that was right, even though that way isn't something that's been seen or done before. If, she wanted someone experienced or someone that was going to give the standard documentary, there are a lot of directors out there, and I knew that Marlee's instincts are great. And so when she first, when you are the first out of anyone, you have to follow your instincts to know how to navigate. In your true north, you're not really sure if there's no other representation. And I know my true north is really, we had this opportunity, and I also had the responsibility to bring audiences into Marlee's world, to experience the world the way she does. I don't think you can really fully understand her story if you didn't understand how she experienced the world. And so far, whenever I've watched documentaries, it never really hit me until I got this job that documentaries for so long have been sound-based. Because for so long, they've always been made by hearing people, about hearing people, for hearing people. And so, of course, that's just something that we've accepted. Like, oh, that's the way it is. We have to always do it the same way. But when I was thinking about Marlee and I'm telling a story about her, I started to think, why do I have to tell the story that way? And I had met some people whenever we had started pulling our team together, and some people had said, no, that's not the way we do things. That's not the way that docs have been made. You can't use 4 cameras on set. And I thought, okay, thank you for your time.
Bye-bye.
Next.
Bye-bye.
I really wanted to find people who saw this as an opportunity in making this project, just to see what a visually based documentary could look like. And when I had done interviews for all the subjects in the film, even when they were hearing, we had a camera on me as well, so you could capture the whole set to see what it is like to work with interpreters, because it can be easy, it can be seamless if people are able to see how it really works. But in our conversations together, I wanted those to be different too. I wanted it to be a conversation between the two of us and not your typical interview. Partially because of what you see in the film, we have a lot of archival of Marlee and how people really have just thrown certain words at her, certain questions, put certain responsibilities on her, and you could really see her discomfort in that archival footage. It was very clear to me. And I didn't want to do that to her again. I wanted us to be together, us to have a conversation, because we do share an experience, and lead with consent, and I wanted to make sure we had a safe space for her and let Marlee lead the conversation wherever it could go. And that's why I think her interviews are so special. And that adds another layer in the film as well, a big theme of not being alone anymore. And we're in this together. I'm feeling what you're feeling. And I'm giving you context for your feelings. I'm not just saying like, hey, this is a weight that you need to carry to explain to me about your whole experience. Times are different now, this time.
I know that there's another thing that connects you, which is that you both grew up in Jewish families, and I'm wondering how you feel that, the Jewish community in general and the communities that you grew up with specifically, interact with deaf people and what kind of progress they've made over the years.
I was very, very fortunate to have grown up in a community where they had a temple that served both hearing and deaf communities. And I was bat mitzvahed there, and I was able to do what every other Jewish child does in their bar mitzvahs. We had the Hebrew before me. I had the Torah before me. I mean, my family was raised conservatively. Every Friday night we would go to temple after dinner for Shabbat, and Sundays was Sunday school, and that's where I got ready for my bat mitzvah, and I loved going to temple. I loved the deaf community there. It was a place where I felt I belonged. And the rabbi who was hearing could sign very fluently. And I really, really was lucky that I had this Jewish experience growing up, being taught about Judaism, our history. Yeah, were you bat mitzvahed?
Mm-mm.
It's not too late.
Yeah. I'm really thinking about, doing it now.
Why not?
Mm-hmm.
It's very important that we are included. So, because a lot of my Jewish friends didn't go to temple because there was no interpreters, or
Right.
there was no deaf temple like I had, to have fortunately have. So yeah.
I wasn't bat mitzvahs because there were no interpreters. And my parents themselves, my dad, he was bar mitzvahed. And my dad went to school without an interpreter. And he felt, do I want to force my daughter to go through that? He wasn't sure, but he was picked to then go play soccer.
I love soccer.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, because of where you were located.
Right. If we had interpreters, I would have loved to do it. But you're right, it's never too late.
Right. And was there a temple for the deaf where you were?
No, not where I lived. We were the only deaf Jewish family there in that area. But in Los Angeles, my mom is part of this huge deaf Jewish temple here. And it's a huge part of my parents, because my dad's from New York City, but not where we grew up, no.
Oh, okay.
Well, I'm remembering as we're talking about this that we actually, I believe, did have an interpreter at either my bar mitzvah or my siblings' bar and bat mitzvahs, because my cousin on the other side, not related to my grandmother, had some hearing problems. And so I think it's nice to see little instances of that, and we, can all aspire for a lot of, widespread inclusivity. And I know, Marlee, you were very involved in championing closed captioning, and there's been a lot of certain advances over the years. How did you want to make sure, that both of you, that this film was accessible to both deaf and hearing audiences?
Closed captioning has always been a very important issue to me since I was a child. The fact that I could always wish I could, it'd be funny to hear the words coming across the screen. I imagined that as a kid. I thought, that's never going to happen. But then when I got older and I saw how technology evolved and was available in so many different arenas, and captioning was part of it, and captioning was there before I entered the entertainment industry. But I remember seeing it for the first time when I saw closed captioning on Three's Company. But did you know that the Academy Awards were the first live broadcast available with captions?
Wow.
So from there, I took advantage of the media, talking to anyone in the media. What better way to talk about it and fight for captions and accessibility? And that's where it all started, really. And now we're using it as a tool, and it's a tool for everyone. Not for just deaf people. How it grew, how it took off, how it exploded. I think anyone would be lying to say that, I don't use captions. You do. You do.
I think that's so typical with accessibility. I think people usually think, like, wider society, greater society usually says, no, accessibility for what? Okay, fine. Like with ramps that we use on the sidewalks. People were like, oh, no, not ramps on the sidewalks. And now everyone uses them for strollers, for suitcases.
You're right.
And the same with captioning. For a long time, people have been like, oh, fine. But now everyone is using captions.
Even on planes, when I'm sitting and watching somebody with their laptop open, and they're watching captions, I'm like, okay, I want to go over there and say, you're welcome.
And that's why I thought it would have been, it would be so cool. Like, I knew from the beginning that we wanted to film this movie differently with captions in mind, to have a wider frame, to be able to have this black bar on the bottom to give us more space for captions, because what better way to show the power of captions in a movie about a woman who has had a great responsibility for making captions possible and passed into law, by showing what captions could do. And for a long time, captions have been made by hearing people. Like most things in the world, they are made by hearing people. And so I always knew what I wanted as a deaf person, as I have been watching different pieces of content. Like sometimes if there's a lot of people on screen and they're all talking over and over, I thought, okay, what if they could have their own color? What if we could move them so that certain pieces of important information aren't being covered? I thought, wow, it could be really fun, which we worked with another deaf woman, Allison O'Daniel, and she's also a director, and we had a collaboration in working on the captions together in the film. And it was so nice to be able to show the power of captioning if we are able to reinvent them a little bit, to have them redefined by people that need them.
Did you see captions?
Yeah, I remember a lot of colors in the film. It's very, very nice.
It's funny because people have said, oh, it's so nice of Shoshannah to do that for hearing people. And I'm like, oh, well, it's for everyone.
Well, I think at Sundance I actually saw Deaf President Now possibly earlier the same day. It's hard to remember because so many movies, those days. And I remember one of the things in the intro, they have everybody getting into frame and someone's talking about how his hands, will go too high. He has to, correct the frame. They have to move the frame because he's signing, and that's not something people think about. That was an event, that I was not aware of because I actually think I was born during that. Like literally that week is when I was born during Deaf President Now.
Oh, really?
In March 1988.
He's a baby.
Oh.
But it was... But it was very nice to have another film, I think, maybe that's the wrong word, but very, very cool to have another film that really talks about that and also uses a similar, visual style, a lot of creativity in terms of its storytelling, which I think is designed to be able to, be received by both deaf and hearing people.
Well,
I think the world needs nuance. It is nice to have two very different films, I believe, both that are addressing different parts of the deaf experience, and both do have different styles. I think the world really needs more nuance, and I think that's dangerous if we only have a single story. That's one theme that's in our film, Children of a Lesser God, for a long time. It is a good story for that time, but not all movies age well, and so I think we need many stories out there that are told in many different ways with different visions. And I feel like every person who is deaf will be able to show their experience in a different way. And so to be able to show things the way that I want, and then to have another person like DPN, they're showing the things that they want, I think our styles are very different.
They're very different films. Obviously, Deaf President Now has a history that is very known in the deaf community, and our time, it took place about our same time, but a lot of books have been written about it, and me being on Nightline as part of the Deaf President Now issue, it's shown in our documentary. But yeah, what are the odds that two deaf movies, quote unquote, two deaf movies are out at the same time? But yeah, I'm very grateful about that experience that they've shown. We need to have more. We need to have more on a regular basis.
And I think we often pitch stories. Marlee and I have been pitching stories together, and we've been pitching to different networks, and you would be amazed at the responses that we get. People will say, like one project that we were so excited about, we pitched, and the studio said, oh no, we can't do it because we have one character on an animated kids show that signs. And so we can't say yes to an hour-long history drama because we already have one deaf character who's using sign language.
It's like, what are we, tokens?
Yeah, you can only have one. there's only room for one deaf story, you know? Or if there are two, then they have to fight each other and we have to see who wins because there can still only be one. And it's like, no, we're all better together. We're all stronger together. And so I am looking forward to a lot more deaf stories coming out and being by different people.
To make it. Not to say, oh, wow, this is something new, a deaf story. Just go ahead and do it. What is it about? Oh, there are deaf people in it? Fine. Just get used to it.
I work sometimes with caterers, and we accommodate certain allergies and dietary needs, and people say, well, it's hard to find something like this. It's like, well, if it's hard, then make everything gluten-free, everything vegetarian. It would imagine the richness if we were going for broad inclusivity rather than just trying to say here's something. And I know the time that I started really getting into TV and movies was the mid 2000s, and watching you again, Shoshannah, on Jericho, and watching you, Marlee, on The L Word and some other things. It's nice to see these really rich storylines of these characters who are so compelling just in their own right, and the fact that they're deaf is critical to the story, but they're existing, they're people, and that's how life is. We need to see more of that.
And you know why? Do you know why? Because they're brilliantly written. They are written by writers who aren't afraid to write characters for us.
Yeah. I remember with Jericho, I had sat and collaborated with those writers, and they were willing to work with me, and I think that's why I had started writing. Because I remember there was this one time I had an episode, and there was a line in it that I really wasn't sure what to do. And the showrunner was there. It was this woman named Carol Barbie. And she said, Shoshannah, what's wrong? And I was young at that time. I was like, well, this line, I'm really feeling like it's not something that I would say as a deaf person. And so she just ripped off the page, and then she said, yeah, here's a pencil, write your own line. I thought, you want me to just write my own line? And so I did. I started writing my own lines, and that really changed everything for me.
Or David E. Kelley. I would call him and say, I'm sure you could think of something brilliant for me to be in your show. Before I knew it, he did it. Aaron Sorkin, same thing. We met for lunch because I was thinking of not selling myself per se as an actor, but meaning like I want to prove who I am. I want, when people meet me in person, they're often like, wait a minute, we're surprised what I'm like in person, other than what they thought I was like by reading about me or seeing me on television. And I thought, well, with Aaron, I would meet him for lunch. We would talk about his show at the time before he did The West Wing, because he had a character in the show that was off screen that was deaf. But rather than write that character, he thought of something else. And he wrote me into The West Wing. Joey Lucas. So yeah. It's about collaboration. It's about engaging each other. Not everyone goes that route, though. People tend to be a little bit afraid. But the people who have written for me and written for Shoshannah, they get it. So hopefully there'll be more of those type of people.
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate also that this film isn't just, highlighting the positive accomplishments, or that there's a lot of engagement with difficult moments and other things, and especially, I think, Marlee, people looking to you to represent the entire deaf experience, not just the deaf community, early on after your Oscar win. How does it feel to reflect back on that now?
It was so long ago when I look back and I think to myself, did this really happen? I didn't quite get what was happening to me and for me at the time because I was so young and I was naive. So to be able to watch it on screen, the way she put it all together, it just blew my mind. I think things would probably have been different now if I had the chance to do it all over again. Obviously, where I am right now, I have a much better understanding of what's right, what's not right, knowing where to go for help, and yet, going forward, I hope that this film will help others who might have been in need as I once was. Because I would talk about it, if it happened today, about the important stuff. Communication and how to find and who to talk to is important, but yet when maybe perhaps seeing this film and we're talking about issues like domestic violence, they might know somebody who's deaf who might need some help, so perhaps I can help them. But winning the award at the time was really a blur for me, as you can see in the film. And I mentioned that I wished I was able to show my joy in winning the Oscar. And I did show my joy with my family in private, but that was, short-lived, because I left home, I moved to New York. Strange times. But I guess that's part of growing up, and it's where I needed to find myself. So many things that were going on around me, to the point where I needed to fix them. For one, I put myself into rehab, and that's the best decision I've ever given myself. It wasn't easy, but I persevered.
In asking questions like this and probing different moments about her life, was there anything, Shoshannah, that really surprised you?
She asked me so many questions. Come on, Shoshannah.
What really surprised me was Marlee's bravery. Well, and I think the hardest part of being the only deaf person in a room, which I haven't experienced exactly what Marlee's experienced, but I think any deaf person or any woman may know what it feels like to be the only woman in a room, or the only deaf person in a room, or the only deaf woman in a room. I mean, there is a specific frame that we are expected to be seen in, and we have to answer based on that expectation, not my own perceptions or perspectives. And I'm often realizing, their perspective of me has more value than what my experience actually is. And sometimes you can explain yourself and someone will say, no, that's not how it is. And then they're waiting until I'm giving them the answer that they're looking for. But when you have someone to process things with, who can pick up on the same feelings that you do or pick up on the same sense, you can kind of feel that weight off your shoulders. And so I was hoping that I could offer that to Marlee in the conversations that we had, to be able to give context, because there's something in Marlee's face that I've always seen, her bravery. Even at the young age of 20, before she won her Oscar, I was always able to see that she was getting asked these questions, and she had this expression that she knew, but she had nobody to process it with. And so I was hoping to offer that. And what surprised me was just how quickly Marlee would say yes. Yes, that's how it really was. There wasn't ever like, oh yeah, there's this old frame that, no, I disagree. But no, always, right away I would ask Marlee a question, and she would say yes, absolutely. And I would feel her openness and her hunger and her curiosity. And that's what she's always had, even after many years of being in this business. The fact that she's had to learn and see things in a different way. I felt that. Well, I felt what she was feeling. Like when I had interviewed her daughter Sarah, it was like, wow, that's the power of intergenerational female friendships, because I had always felt like women gain vocabulary now that they didn't have before. And so I may have some vocabulary that maybe Marlee didn't have, but then how Sarah, her daughter, spoke about what she saw in Marlee's book and in Children of a Lesser God, those were things that took me years to have a realization of. Like, I didn't know why I had felt sick every night after I had played Sarah in Children of a Lesser God on stage. I didn't know. It was bad. I would throw up sometimes. I was so sick. I didn't know why. I kept thinking maybe it was the nerves, something. But then later I realized, it's not a love story at all that I was playing a character in. But Sarah, her daughter, knew right away. She saw the movie for the first time when she was 19, which is the same age that Marlee was when she played that character, and Sarah knew right away. That's not a love story at all. It's a toxic story. I'm like, I get chills thinking about it and her response in the film. It's profound. The power that, again, with time that has passed and the generations and what we give to those after us, I wanted that layer to be in the film.
She gave me permission. I didn't have to seek permission to talk about my life story. I didn't need permission from people to tell me what I was feeling or how to feel or whatever that was. Yeah. I was the one to lead and tell my story. And for the longest time, I didn't know how. Because when I sat down with her, I realized, oh, there was an open door for me. Thank you.
Any particularly powerful experiences of people coming up to you after any of the screenings at, Sundance or Tribeca?
There were a few people who came up to me and said, I'm sorry. And I said, for what? For misjudging and hating you for who you were, as I thought about you in the past. I really didn't know how to react with words, so I just gave them a hug. And thought, move on. For now. This has been a healing process for me. And maybe I'll have words to say to those people who said that. Like, okay, you're forgiven. No, I don't think that. I'm not there yet. I don't know what it is. I mean, it's something to forgive because they're not at fault.
No.
It's the system that fed them the wrong narrative. To not like me without knowing the real me.
Mm-hmm. That's what they said to me, because I've wanted to show in the film, like, my perspective, I've felt like it's the media's fault. They really, like, what happened after the Oscars, whenever Marlee had spoke when she was presenting, it was like, hey, deaf people, do you want a platform? I'll give you a platform, but you have to say something really negative about another deaf person, because that's easier to say, oh, deaf people, they're mad at another deaf person, rather than asking why. What are we telling people that cause so much pain within other people? To be deaf is to experience some type of pain, whether it's on a profound level or a little bit, but deaf people will have pain. And so when you give the community an outlet and then you point it to another deaf person like Marlee, they're going to take it out on her. And I feel like the media really did manipulate that situation. Rather than taking responsibility and saying, hey, we've made Marlee feel like she had to speak to get more work. Because it is very clear that that's what they were saying. And calling Marlee mute when she's not mute. And so for people that have come up to me after the film, they've said, I never knew that I was a puppet. Wow. The movie doesn't say that at all. It was my intention, though, for people to put pieces together. And again, I think the system really wants to make sure that we stay apart, that we're not united. And so that was one way that the media used to divide us.
It's sad that, well, for example, getting work for deaf actors like myself, we're all different as actors. Some speak, some don't, some speak fairly well. And Hollywood just doesn't give out jobs to all of us as they would with hearing people or hearing actors. And I had a conversation with two deaf people. One speaks very, very well, and the other one doesn't speak at all. And we were having a discussion, and I think I made the mistake of criticize me if I'm wrong, or correct me if I'm wrong. I think I made the mistake to this one person. If you want to get into Hollywood as an actor, they're both actors, by the way. One is ahead of the other one in terms of their success. You speak very well. And Hollywood likes that. And I said that because, just from my experience, what I've seen, this person is deaf, they can speak, oh, this is great, then we can help them. This will help us with our project for the show, because we don't have to think about interpreters, we don't have to think about all that other stuff. And my friend, who doesn't speak at all, just like glared at me. And I thought, what did I do wrong? And I went, oh, shoot. And after we had this little talk, she didn't speak to me for a good week. And finally I said, well, what did I do wrong? She goes, you hurt my feelings. You diminished me as a deaf actor. You said that I cannot ever get work again in Hollywood because I don't speak. And I realized, oh, gosh. I was telling her the truth of what I experienced, and I had to explain that to them. So I guess I'm to speaking the truth, I guess I got stuck there. But then again, it shouldn't be this way. Hollywood is manipulating us. I mean, there's a whole spectrum of deaf people, just as there are with hearing people and actors. The same thing happens with deaf actors.
I think the issue is when they have a deaf character on TV, it's like all deaf actors should come in. Regardless of your age, regardless of your gender, any deaf person can be cast for this one role. And it shouldn't be that way. I just think it's hard for people to really, again, have nuance related to the deaf experience. And I think that's why the answer is we need more. We need more stories, not less. Because hearing people just think, how do I write for a deaf person? The closest imitation of me. And it's like, no, that's not really what a deaf person is. Every deaf person is different. And that's why if I'm talking with people in casting, I say, hey, you find the actors that you want to work with. And then you write the character to fit them. And if you're into that character, then how are they going to communicate? Are they going to just use sign language? Great, that's fine, it doesn't matter. Don't write a character that speaks fluently and then try to find an actor that fits that.
It should be the other way around.
Yes, the other way around. But that's not how it's typically done or works out. But that doesn't mean that that's how it always has to be done. But I think things can and should change.
That's a lesson that I learned when I was having this conversation.
But will it change?
I don't know.
Sometimes I think, yes, things can change, and sometimes I think, oh gosh.
It should.
But yeah, I mean.
But listen, I'm over it.
Over it. Me too.
That's our sign. I'm over it.
It's an inside joke.
It's an inside joke.
Well, I have so much more I'd love to ask. We're almost out of time, so I want to end by saying, what stories are you telling next, either in front of the camera or behind it? The two of you. Shoshannah?
There are so many stories that I want to tell. Really, it depends. It just depends not on me. It depends on people that are able to say yes. It is really hard for people to say yes right now. A lot of people will ask me like it's up to me, and I'm like, oh, it's not up to me. It's not up to Marlee. It's up to those who are sitting at the table with the power to say yes.
Second that.
Well, thank you so much for your time. Thank you to all our interpreters here. This has really been such a pleasure, and I look forward to this film getting out into the world and seeing all the stories you have after that.
Thank you.
Thank you, and I really hope that it will eventually hit me that all this is happening. Thank you so much.